Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to this learning experience brought to you by Firefly. My name is Cody, and I'd love to welcome you back to Techstrong Learning, where we have another exciting presentation ahead. Before we get things rolling, we do have just a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to review with you. First, today's session is being recorded. So if you happen to miss any of our event, you have to leave early, you will be receiving a recording of our session today shortly after we conclude our live session. If you'd like to engage with us, there are a couple of options for you to do so. The first option is the chat tab, which you'll find on the right side of your screen. I'd like you to go ahead and start testing out that chat tab like some of you already have by letting us know from where in the world you are joining us. If you do have any specific questions for us, we do want you to send those into the Q&A tab, as that just helps us keep track of your questions, and we'd really like to answer as many questions as we can today. So be sure to use that Q&A panel. If you jump over to our handouts, you'll notice there is a resource there for you, so feel free to grab that at your own leisure. And of course, before we close things out today, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So be sure to stick around to see if you're one of our lucky winners. So our topic today is NextGen CMDB, proven techniques to manage modern cloud infrastructure. And joining me today is Ido Niemann, co-founder and CEO at Firefly. Ido, thanks so much for joining me today on Techstrong Learning. Would you like to go ahead and take it from here?
Yes, thank you, Cody, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Cody mentioned, my name is Ido Niemann. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Firefly, the cloud asset management solution. But I'd like to take the next few minutes to tell you a bit about what we think on next gen or next generation CMDB. How do we see the changing cloud landscape evolving in terms of management solutions for the rising challenges within it. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me at any given moment or just writing your comments in the chat bar, and I'll try to address all of them. So let's start with the basics. What is a CMDB? CMDB, or in full language, configuration management databases, are solutions to manage IT infrastructure. Most the most of the CMDB solutions are built on top of ITAM, or IT asset management, and it allows us to really control our entire IT infrastructure from a single management system, which is the system of record or source of truth for our infrastructure. And it allows us to ensure that we know everything that we have in our IT infrastructure, that it's reliable, that we can plan ahead, that we can handle troubleshooting and events in the proper manner, and that we use our resources. It can be the actual servers, the racks, any other IT equipment, or even some software particles of our IT infrastructure in the right manner and according to the license and governance that our company or our industry impose on us. So why CMDBs were adopted across almost any large enterprise and many other companies? Why do one of the first steps for any IT leader is to adopt a good CMDB solution? Because A, it allows us to have a source of truth for our entire infrastructure. We know how our infrastructure should be set up, and then we can compare it to its actual states. Then we're able to track the dependencies of our infrastructure and each resource that lives inside it. Then, for many companies, compliance and governance is a really big issue. So we need to have a system that allows to track and ensure that we're not in any breach of third party or state or any other government issued compliance or regulation, or even our internal governance. Planning for any changes for our IT infrastructure, troubleshooting. Let's say, for example, I have a burnt server in my data center in my basement. Now I want to replace it. How do I know where to find it? I have probably hundreds of different servers running in my basement. How do I find it and replace it? Even if I find it, how would I know which other or sorry, alternative servers should I use in the meantime? I should route the traffic, so I should know which routers feed these servers, and so on and so forth. What's the right configuration for each and every um, IT resource or configurations item? How the application that runs on my infrastructure is built. If I have, let's say, a SQL database, do I have um, an updated license? Is this license going to end soon? And lastly, cost management, ensuring that we as the IT organization get or take the right decision when building our infrastructure. But even if we try to take a step back and think about what are the core questions that IT leaders ask themselves and that CMDB is able to answer, we think it comes down to four very basic questions. One is, what's my IT infrastructure really looks like? What particles or resources comprise my IT? Then, how do I connect or map between the business application or business requirements to my IT infrastructure? Then we can speak about if anything or everything in my current infrastructure is properly managed in terms of compliance, governance, or license management. And lastly, and probably most important, does it meet my goals? Is my current infrastructure configured correctly for me to achieve my goals, my KPIs, my OKRs, my other metrics that I'm measured upon that my business becomes successful if I'm meeting? And this is why IT teams go to use CMDBs, because this systems of records allows us to really answer all of these questions in a very simple and efficient manner. So, as mentioned before, the core um, part of CMDB is ITAM, IT Asset Management. And IT Asset Management is built on top of few key features. First is having an inventory for my entire IT infrastructure. But this inventory is being fed by two different streams of data. One is manually, where my IT team will manually insert data into the CMDB. Sometimes or many times it's the actual configuration. But the next part of ITAM is discovery. Those IT infrastructures can get to very big sizes, and trying to manually ingest all of them into the CMDB will take forever and will consume a lot of time for my IT professionals. So many times ITAMs have a built-in automatic discovery mechanism that works interconnectedly with the manual um, addition of data. Then it maps the connections and the dependencies between different IT particles and resources in my IT infrastructure. And this allows me to, to get or make really good decisions regarding my resources. If we take the simple example I used earlier, if I know that a specific server is connected to a specific router, which is connected to a specific internet gateway, I know how to prepare for the replacement of a specific server or for an upgrade in my um, web internet gateway software. Then there's the very big issue of event management and troubleshooting. If I don't know where to look and what the proper configuration, it becomes very hard and time consuming to fix and handle issues. We spoke about the license and lifecycle management for the IT infrastructure itself and the business applications that runs on top of it. And lastly, we should remember that many times, especially for those larger enterprises and organizations, there's a really big demand to be audit ready. So We can speak about software bill of materials, but CMDB is very big on IT or infrastructure bill of material bill of materials. So some regulations and some auditors will ask you to get a full, very detailed list of every infrastructure part that runs your applications. This is one thing that CMDB can be very helpful with. So up until now, I've talked only about CMDB on IT infrastructure, but this webinar is all about proven techniques to manage modern cloud infrastructure, and I've yet to talk about the cloud. And why is that? Because we start with proven techniques. And while we are very big believers in cloud and cloud native in our mindset, we want to learn from our, I don't want to say predecessors, but we want to learn from all the professional IT people that built an incredible industry before us and handled similar um, challenges and difficulties. So CMDB is very well established within IT. It's a very big market. It's a very, very established solution and mature one. But when we shifted to the cloud, we almost forgot about asset management. So CMDB or IT asset management, is huge. But how come cloud asset management is being neglected? And this is what we want to really focus on right now. How to take this amazing philosophy of IT asset management and use it to solve our problems or challenges when handling the cloud. So the cloud is booming. It's accelerating every day, every minute, obviously every year. More and more solutions. Not only that the cloud is growing by size, it's also growing by importance because more mission critical applications and workloads are shifting to the cloud. But while this happens, it becomes even more complex in managing the cloud because we have multi cloud and we have so many different technologies, but we are lacking a system of record for the cloud. We are lacking this management solution for the cloud. So what you'll see here, it's a very abstracted image or illustration that we try to use to show what is the cost of doing nothing. If you just let your cloud manage itself or use some spreadsheets or team uh, um, joint memory or collaborative memory, um, you're in a very high risk of having a lot of unplanned work, having a lot of errors, troubleshooting becomes super difficult, drifts in configuration. But if you properly manage it using cloud asset management or NextGen CMDB that I'm going to introduce soon, then you're in control. Then you can reap the entire benefits of moving to the cloud. So before I'd like to speak about cloud asset management and next generation CMDB, I will say that in many of the teams that we are interacting with and to the minds of many cloud leaders, using IAC or infrastructure as code solutions like HashiCorp's Terraform, Pulumi, CloudFormation by AWS, Bicep, and so on and so forth. This is the system of record because what we're doing when we're using IAC, we are literally codifying the desired state or the configuration of each and every different cloud resource that we're using. So some believe that just adoption of IAC gives you the cloud management system of record, but we want to claim otherwise, or we want to make a bigger claim. Um, we'll get to it very, very shortly. So let's take a different approach on looking on the cloud. Cloud is fantastic. It allows us to move faster and be more innovative and agile. But in the same time, it is very much challenging due to the overwhelming complexity. We start by noting that the cloud is extremely fragmented, right? Multi cloud is a fact. So I have my Ali Cloud, AWS, GCP, Azure, and some others. Maybe I have a hybrid cloud with Equinix, hybrid cloud with my on prem deployments. It's just never ending. And on top of this multi cloud, I have multiple accounts per cloud. Then we've added Kubernetes and serverless and some other cloud native technologies. On top, we've added or we're using infrastructure as code or configuration as code tools to build and maintain our infrastructure. And then we bring on hundreds of different open source solutions and third party applications from great vendors like Datadog or GitLab or Snowflake or Redis Labs. So the fragmentation is huge, but even today, but is growing every day, and it's just unsustainable. But all the while, cloud allows us higher pace of innovation. So the velocity of changes is overwhelming again. And not only that we change things faster in a very rapid pace, those cloud resources are being changed by multiple teams from multiple locations and by multiple personnel. So I have my DevOps teams, my SRE, my platform engineering, backend teams, maybe some front end, maybe some SecOps, and it just never ends. Everyone changes the cloud, and again, new technologies increase the fragmentation. But we can say that we're now locking the cloud down. Just the main platform team or the main DevOps team changes the cloud or deploy to the cloud, but then we lose some of the core benefits of the cloud, which are agility and democratization of deploying things to the infrastructure. So, um, one of the greatest complexities and challenges of the cloud is to balance between agility and control, or central governance and democratizations. So, a very big issue. Then we can speak about the very important need to meet cloud engineers or cloud operators in their own choosing stacks and workflow. We can't let or we can't tell our cloud engineers what to use. They will use the solutions they like. For example, some CMDBs systems have a ticketing system. We can try to impose this ticketing system on our cloud engineers, but they will probably choose a modern ticketing solution like, for example, Jira, which is very popular these days. And lastly, one of what we believe is one of the core elements of complexity for the cloud is that we're missing the management system. What is the system of record for the cloud? What is the source of truth for the cloud? And again, if we spoke about which questions IT managers want to answer, we can think about which answers cloud owners want to answer, platform engineers want to answer, and they are very much similar because it's in the end it's the same infrastructure that runs our applications. So cloud operators want to answer few or top three main questions. A, what comprises my cloud infrastructure? How does it really look like? Do I have some shadow IT? Do I don't? Do I have everything that I need? Am I missing something? Then, does it meet my goals? Does it help me get my business goals, my OKR, my KPRs? Is it properly configured? And if not, how do I get there, or how my team and I work together to get to the desired state of the cloud as fast and efficiently as possible? This is very important. And the point that we're trying to make today is just like IT asset management and CMDB help the IT infrastructure managers solve these questions and get control over the infrastructure, IT infrastructure. Cloud asset management or next generation CMDB help solve the exact same problems or issues when moving to the cloud, which is much more complex and fragmented. So with cloud asset management, NextGen CMDB, you get full discovery for everything in your cloud footprint. Then you need to understand that this discovery, we've mentioned that in the more legacy CMDB, IT CMDB, some of the data is ingested manually, but the cloud changes so fast. It's all about replicating things between many different regions and different cloud. You can't do it. Not only this, you got to have near real-time discovery. You got to have data freshness at the pace of cloud. So when my Kubernetes containers, Docker containers go up and down 18 times an hour, I want my CMDB to show this. When I'm changing my um, secure web gateway configuration 4 times a day, I want my CMDB to show it. When my FinOps solution changes my instances every 15 minutes, I want the CMDB to show it, and so on and so forth. So automated discovery for everything in my cloud at cloud pace. Then we need to analyze the status of everything that I have in my cloud. So it's not enough just to see everything. We got to understand which part of my cloud are properly controlled and codified versus unmanaged, misconfigured, or inefficient. Once we find those, because the cloud became so mission critical to us, and because the pace of innovation is so rapid, we gotta have automatic fixes and remedies for it. So we can't rely only on manual solutions for it. Um, After we discovered, we analyze the status and we fix the issues or the problems, the errors, we need to ensure we have the right framework and right solution to govern our cloud. We got to be able to set our desired state for the cloud and enforce it using policies, using classifications, using workflows, and lastly, be audit ready in terms of governance. On top of everything that I mentioned right now, it's always good to be ready for backup and restore. One of the greatest advantages of cloud is it for being software defined infrastructure. We can't have software backup for on prem physical data centers. But with the cloud, I can have um, electronic replicas for my entire infrastructure. It can be my actual AWS GCP Azure deployments. It could be even my Okta or Datadog or Redis solution. Everything in each granularity must be backed up for me to be able to restore it. Sorry, I just lost my slides for some reason. All right, we got it back. So moving forward, sorry for the interruption. What are the key benefits of cloud asset management and why the leading cloud teams out there are adopting this, let's say, semi-new concept or new solution with very established roots. So for starters, they're getting the ability to have a fully controlled and codified cloud. They can see everything in their cloud and ensure it's all properly codified, meaning covered with infrastructure as code that sets the desired state or the actual configuration of the cloud and is under control. Now it can be governed and managed properly. Then we can see everything in every granularity, find everything super fast, and remove friction from the day-to-day cloud operation, be it DevOps engineers, SRE, platform engineers. If we remove this friction between going between team members, going between different teams, going to documentation, we can make the cloud work much more smoothly and much more in a much more fluid way. Um, then those teams go to cloud asset management solution to increase the reliability of their cloud while keeping the agility. Because if you have this cloud asset management capability, you can still deploy as fast as you'd like to the cloud, reap the agility, reap the faster innovation capabilities of the cloud, but you maintain the control. You are setting some guardrails. So and yeah, sorry for the sirens. Something happened here. If maybe someone didn't configure the cloud asset management properly, sorry for this. Um, so I'm coming again to the point about reliability while keeping agility. So if I have my guardrails, if I have this safety net, which is called cloud asset management, that will allow me to catch every misconfiguration of my in the cloud, every unmanaged resource, every shadow IT deployed to the cloud. I can let my teams be fully operational, give them autonomy allow to balance the democratization aspect of this equation. Just move fast. Our cloud asset management solution will handle any problem that will arise. Um, it can also help us increase the efficiency because we get a consistent manner of controlling the cloud. So it doesn't matter if you have different teams with different levels of experience. One junior engineer with 2 years of experience or 2 months, and the other one with 15 years of experience. This cloud asset management allows us to enforce golden images or desired state. So everyone gets to the most preferred level or highest level of cloud technologies or cloud management without really needing to let the more senior developers do everything. And lastly, um, we can always know that the desired state of the cloud is being met. We can set some rules in our cloud asset management solution or NextGen CMDB to tell us, I want my cloud to always be XYZ compliant. And the system will allow us to find any deviation for it. I want my cloud to be cost optimized. We can set some guardrails to allow us meet those goals, and so on and so forth. So before I'll wrap up, I'll just address the key differences between traditional CMDB and next generation CMDB. And I don't want to go into too much details, but we did set up few key elements. One, and I start with even a broader perspective. CMDBs or IT asset management were built to an era where we had physical servers on our basement that were changed every 2, 3, maybe 4 years. When we're now talking about cloud infrastructure, we're changing servers and containers and serverless functions a few times a minute or an hour. So handling the cloud complexity and cloud pace and cloud native technologies with system that was built 20 years ago for a different era is very hard. So we need to ask ourselves, um, why do we need next gen CMDB if we already have a traditional CMDB? And the answer is that traditional CMDB is just not good enough when trying to manage the modern cloud infrastructure. So some key points to examine: do we have the ability to get full cloud visibility from the hyperscalers, AWS, GCP, Azure, Ali Cloud, Oracle Cloud, through serverless, OpenShift, Kubernetes, and up to third-party, very important cloud vendors like Okta and Datadog and the rest of it. Then, do we get visibility to infrastructure as code coverage? We mentioned it as the key element for modern cloud management, something that you get only from the next-gen CMDBs. Do we get data freshness? Do we get an updated data in the pace of cloud, or is it something that is updated every few days, every month, even once a day is not good enough? Then do we track drifts from our desired state? Do we track misconfigurations in real time before it affects our customers or our stakeholders? Do we have the ability to create policies and enforce them as code to meet our own internal guardrails and governance, or even industry best practices? Do we have automatic fixes and remediations for those issues? Because as we mentioned earlier, if you have so many moving parts in your cloud and so many different technologies managed by so many different teams, if you rely only on manual fix for your issues, um, it's going to create a very significant bottleneck, and you won't be able to probably fix all the issues and errors at the right time. So next-gen CMDB, unlike traditional CMDB, should offer automatic fixes for it. And lastly, um, do we meet the modern workflows? Do we meet the DevOps and platform engineers and SREs, site reliability engineers, where they are currently working, or do we try to impose more legacy IT workflows on them? And with that, I'm finished. I'm happy to take any questions or comments or open it for discussion. So please use the chat. I'm happy to see if I can be of any assistance.
Sure, Ido. It looks like we've gotten quite a few questions. So let's just go ahead and start taking these from the top. Um, how are we able to marriage with certain databases to control various environments on premises to database Kubernetes instances? And they ask for some examples.
All right, so I'm not sure I'm getting this entirely, but I will say that. Oh, thank you very much. Uh, um, so I will say that one of the good things about using NextGen CMDB together with a traditional CMDB is that you can have a view of your on-prem environment and your cloud environment and work together between them. So you can have a MySQL database running in your own basement on your own bare metal server connecting to a Kubernetes cluster running on Azure Cloud and ingesting the data. And this cluster runs another database, which is cloud native. So uh, um, it just works. You don't need the CMDB part of it, but I would very highly recommend documenting this in your traditional CMDB. The next gen CMDB will get it automatically because then you can learn about the dependencies. And if you have a production issue, it will be very easy for you to understand how the entire chain of this service is connected and built for you to address. And hopefully, the next gen CMDB can even offer some fixes or at least get you somewhere along the way of fixing the issue.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Ido. Our next question reads, which is more secure, single cloud or multi-cloud infrastructure?
It's a very good question. I would say that probably it has its ups and downs, and we should consider everything by itself. By the way, this is not an official advice, right? Do your own DDA. Every cloud infrastructure is different, but I would say the more the more resources that you had to your cloud, uh, um, the attack surface grows. So you might think that a single cloud is less or more secure because it has less attack surface for malicious actors to take advantage of. But I think because the hyperscalers are so good at security, and because when you use all the modern tools and industry best practices uh, um, to deploy to multi-cloud, you are undertaking a lot of security tests. It might even help you fortify your cloud security posture because it also make the blast radius for every attack much smaller. But again, I need to know the specific use case to give a smart answer and not just something that is random.
Of course, yeah, it always depends. So our next question reads, how do CMDB scan my cloud or IT infrastructure? And that is from Vince from Texas.
All right, Vince. So let's start with the cloud CMDBs. The cloud CMDBs um, scans, or the next gen CMDB scan your cloud automatically. So all the modern solutions just connect using APIs and no agents are involved to automatically scan everything that's connected to your organization and just build this inventory in near real time automatically. When we're speaking about the on-prem IT, it's a bit more complex. As mentioned before, some of the data must be ingested manually, which is complex and time consuming, and some using advanced discovery mechanism by the CMDBs. But the problem is it's sometimes limited by APIs, it's limited by the specific vendor. If you have a router by Juniper and Cisco, it might work, but if you have a use or a smaller player, it might not be detected or discovered by the CMDB. So NextGen CMDB are also NextGen um, in the way they scan the configured items and the cloud resources.
Perfect. Moving right along, what tools do you consider to be traditional CMDB versus next-gen CMDB, and can they coexist?
All right, so let's start with the second part. Yes, they can coexist, and we see them coexist. So now for the first part, um, I would say that the most commonly used traditional CMDB is probably ServiceNow, IT Asset Management and CMDB solution. Some other notable vendors include BMC software and some other smaller ones, but BMC and ServiceNow probably cater the core part of the market. In the next gen CMDB, we can mention solutions like CloudAware and Risotto, and full disclosure, the company which I founded, Firefly.
So, kind of a bit of a follow up to that is how do you see next gen CMDB in the ecosystem, and do you think it will replace traditional, or do you think they'll continue to work alongside?
So I think it's still early to say. I think that next gen CMDBs are currently, or all the solutions that I know of, like the top 6, 7 solutions that I can think about, um, are focused currently only on cloud and do not scan the on-prem IT. So together, um, with your previous questions, they work together. So they ingest data into the traditional traditional CMDB. Sorry, but in the future, I do see them crossing the line. So next-gen CMDB also scanning IT stuff, and traditional CMDBs are already starting to try and have some attempts at the cloud aspect of managing the infrastructure. But again, you need to inspect if they meet the minimum criteria or minimum threshold to count as next-gen.
Perfect. So, Ido, thank you so much for that in-depth response. We're just kind of pivot into a new topic, but how do we apply and enforce policies with NG CMDB?
So it's a good question because it varies between the different solutions. Let's speak about the philosophy. So CMDB should allow you to run any policy across all the resources that it manages. Um, Many different engines for policies. Some are open source, some are proprietary. Everyone, an open source has its own advantages. Proprietary has its own. So again, no single right or wrong answer here. But you should be able to just type in policies and get them checked or benchmarked against your cloud infrastructure. Problem becomes on how do you write those policies? Do you use policies like with GSL, the general language, but you need to master the specific language? Do you use SQL? Do you use Rego language, which is very popular? Or we're now starting to see uh, um, some leading vendors adopting AI, which allows you to just type policies in plain English and let AI create the policies out of it automatically. And then it can also tell you, listen, if this is the policy that you're looking for, I can extend it with some best practices from the industry. So this is the very bleeding edge of how to impose policies on next gen CMDBs.
Sorry, I'm pivoting questions a little bit to update our flow a little bit. But what do you think about the future of CMDBs? Is that is how or sorry, here is the actual question. How is the next CMDB organized? Is it plugins, APIs, and other interfaces? Is it pure coding? What are your thoughts there?
So we live in a world where everything has to be API based. You should code in it. It should be extensible to work with your existing APIs. It should be extensible to connect to your traditional CMDB or any other system of record that you'd like. but it's built on top of APIs.
Perfect. Moving right along, do you have any recommended backup solutions that are compatible with Firefly?
Compatible with Firefly. Firefly has its own integrated backup and restore solutions, but there are some other vendors that try to offer backup and restore solutions for the cloud.
Perfect. This next question reads, so it's kind of a long one. Cindy Blake, who is helping us on the back end, posted this one from our chat into our Q&A. So I'll go ahead and put it up on the screen. But can the Firefly CMDB create relationships between cloud resources based on tags? Can it generate a service map? Basically, if I have a business app that is made of Lambda, RDS, and EC2, can the Firefly infer the relationship via tags or through mapping the relationships via the cloud provider's API?
Short answer is yes, definitely. But now let me speak about the broader NextGen CMDB and not just Firefly. NextGen CMDB, as mentioned before, even the traditional CMDB has a very important attribute of showing the dependencies and relationships between the different configuration items, right? We talked about the server that connected to this router, which connected to the web gateway, and I need to exchange something. I need to understand the entire dependency chain. In the cloud, it becomes much more complex, as you mentioned. I don't remember the question now, but a Lambda, a server, a database, right? It constantly changes, and you need to track it. So one of the key elements of next-gen CMDB is not just to inventory your cloud, is inventory and list the dependencies and connection between any resource. And yes, some customers or some users of next-gen CMDBs would like to get a service map. Some would just use the CLI and see all the connections per. If you touch a resource, let's see all the first and second circle dependencies.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It looks like we have just a couple of questions remaining in our queue. So that is a shout to our audience. If you have anything else, feel free to send it in. Ido, how do CMDBs scan my cloud or IT infrastructure?
So I think we touched it a little bit a few questions ago, but I'll say it again. Next-gen CMDBs are built on agentless scanning. So next-gen CMDBs connect to your cloud APIs. It can be hyperscalers like the big 3, 4, 5 clouds. It can be your Kubernetes clusters, anything else, your Okta provider, connect to it, run a bunch of different scanning methods to ensure that they have the correct data just in time, and every configurable parameter, and then store it in the CMDB inventory.
All right. So what is the structure of the CMDB to manage data in the cloud infrastructure?
Structure to manage it, it's unstructured. This is the beauty of it. So as mentioned before, every resource stands by itself, but then it has multiple connections on or dependencies, but also attributions. So every resource should be attributed to the right cloud provider. Is it Kubernetes deployment? Is it GCP project that owns it? Then a specific account, because we mentioned that in the cloud we have many accounts per cloud provider. Then which region it runs on. Then which infrastructure as code manage it or not. Which is the user that owns this resource, and when this was last touched by a human or by a role that operates by a human. What is the source of truth? So many different attributions, but generally speaking, it's about being unstructured and trying to give a very flexible management system for a very complex system that is just built whichever you like.
All right, wonderful. Ido, we are at our last question for now. So since you mentioned AI, of course, we've got to touch on it. So how is CMDB collaborating with AI, and what is the future goal of using AI?
So it's a double-edged sword. I don't want us to go to this very buzzwordy discussion, but imagine you can chat with your cloud or chat with your CMDB. So let's say I want to see everything that runs in my cloud. So I'm using my Slack or my Microsoft Teams uh, um, uh, interface and chatting with the NextGen CMDB. Show me all instances that were deployed by Cody with the tag production and haven't been connected to in the last 30 days. And then you get a list. Now you say, okay, how many of the, or which one out of these servers touched X, Y, and Z service ever? You get a list of two of them. Now you say, okay, keep those, delete the rest. Okay, it's as easy as that. Once upon a time, just 7 months ago, it would have taken you a team working for 2 days to establish it or and accomplish it. Now with AI, if you have the proper next gen CNDB set up with all the right data ingested into it and managed into it, it's a game changer. Again, we talked about policies. You don't have to be proficient in policy engines or SQL engine or any other engine. You can just write plain English. You can uh, uh, um, understand the connection better. You can do some cost reductions in a very smart manner because you say, this is my load, this is my application. Find the right size for this instance. Okay, so AI and next-gen CMDB are it's a perfect marriage between the two.
Well, it sounds like it's exciting things to come, burgeoning field. So we'll see what happens there. Ido, thank you so much for joining us today on Techstrong Learning. We have exhausted all of our questions, and so I did just want to come back to you one final time in case there were anything that
Yeah.
you felt our audience needed to know before we close things out.
So I will say two last things. One, participant 712 asked names of the next gen CMDBs. I mentioned Cloud Aware, Risotto. I can speak about Toolbot and obviously Firefly. Again, full disclosure, I'm the CEO of Firefly, so I'm not trying to preach anything here. One last thing, if you are interested in next gen CMDB, we have here a QR code, and Cindy Blake shared the link in the chat to get this very deep but short um, guide about how to really use next gen CMDB for the cloud. Please feel free to scan and use it, and we'll be happy to know if it's been helpful to you.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you, Cody. It was my pleasure, and thank you for moderating.
Of course, of course. So, to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. I do just want to remind you that we were recording this session today. You will be receiving an email with a link to access the on demand recording. And of course, you can find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars. And be sure to look in the on demand section. I mentioned at the top of the hour that we would be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So our winners are Kwabena A, Mallory C, Mohammed C, and Duncan B. So congratulations to our 4 winners. Keep an eye on your inbox to claim your gift card. It should make its way to you in the next 48 hours. Again, if you don't happen to see that, check your spam folder just in case it happens to be filtered out. I'd like to thank Firefly for sponsoring our program today. And again, to our audience, thank you so much for being here with us for the past 50 minutes. We really appreciate your time, and we do want to hear your feedback. So if you stick around, as soon as we close things out, there will be a survey that pops up. It's also in the chat, but we would love to hear your feedback, whether it's about this program or if you have suggestions for a future program. Of course, let us know there as well. Either way, we do hope to see everyone at a future Techstrong learning experience. Have a great rest of your day, and Ido, thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.